Hi everyone, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today we've got the pleasure of watching LeBot from the European server playing in their BZ176, and today I'm going to be letting you know exactly why this vehicle should never be sold again. This vehicle is currently packing an average win ratio on the European server of nearly 55%. Now, that win ratio will be slightly higher than it probably would be if Wargaming had sold the vehicle recently, because people who have this vehicle have had it for the last 9 or 10 months. It was last available inside the loot boxes in the 2022 Christmas Holiday Ops event. And since then, very unusually for a tank, Wargaming have not made it available since. Usually, when they put vehicles in the game, they'll put them in some kind of loot box event. When they first put them into the game, then they'll get a load of players to buy loot boxes to be able to effectively gamble to get the tank. And then maybe 6 months later, they'll sell it for cash. And then a year later or 2 years later after the vehicle, if it doesn't have that much value anymore in the game, then they'll start to sell it for gold inside the tech tree. So it's kind of like this cascade of Wargaming trying to monetize exclusivity around a vehicle. However, this one, it hasn't been sold this year, and today I'm going to be letting you know exactly why this vehicle should never be sold again. It is the most damaging tank inside the Matchmaker. It's 800 alpha damage on its 160mm main armament. Just absolutely destroys the game and the balance of it. This vehicle is just causing huge problems inside the Matchmaker for not only equal tier tanks, but especially for the lower tier tanks as well. It's one thing when you're playing like a tier 10 tank and you get hit for 800 by a tier 8 heavy tank, and it's another thing when you're playing a tier 6 and you can't literally come around the corner, otherwise you're going to lose pretty much your entire vehicle. Wargaming made this vehicle very pay to win as well. It has armor piercing rounds which have less alpha, 650. That could work at the game with its horrible gun handling and its horrible reload, with 208mm of pen. But the gold rounds, which cost 7,200 a shot, have 225mm of pen and 800 damage. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't think about is that armor piercing rounds will have 5 degrees of normalization, meaning that they will actually have pretty much the same kind of level as the high explosive rounds if you're firing at angled surfaces of 5 degrees and more. However, the HE rounds should have less penetration for more alpha damage. They just frankly feel as if they're rounds that if they pen, they do a huge amount. And even if you're firing at vehicles that sometimes maybe you're not going to go through guaranteed, you still end up doing several hundred damage to your opponents. And that is it's just outrageous. And when you get a high roll, 906 to the 53 TP, and it allows LeBot to be able to absolutely bludgeon that tech tree tank to the garage. This vehicle is packing an average win ratio on the European server of nearly 55%. And as I said, that's going to be slightly higher because there have been no new BZ176 players learning the vehicle, which would keep its win ratio slightly below that. But that means that, let's say that you're a 50% win rate player, then you're probably going to be packing at least about 53 to 54% win ratio in this tank. Everybody is getting padded up. We can actually look on Tomato GG to see that the win rate curve of this tank is pretty much 2.5% above what every player's average win ratio is across their entire account. So that clearly shows that the vehicle is outrageously good, and it allows players like LeBot to be able to do 4,700 damage in a brand new map. Well, when I say a brand new map, the recently changed area of Mountain Pass. There's enough to worry about when you're just trying to learn how maps have changed inside World of Tanks, let alone also having to consider that there's a tank that can remove half of your hit points in a single shot. Now, the damage per minute on this tank, if you can manage to penetrate these 800 alpha damage shells, is not even that bad at 1,920. And it really shows you that alpha damage is huge in World of Tanks. And if you have a vehicle like this that has competitive damage per minute, if it manages to pen its shells, and huge alpha as well, in the right situations, it's just an absolute monster. You've seen on my channel recently quite a few FE405 games where that vehicle does disgusting things. Well, imagine kind of having similar levels of of the way that the shells work, but also having 240 millimeters of frontal hull armor, 250 millimeters of turret armor on the front, and 152 at the side, meaning the tier 6 tanks don't really stand too much chance against this vehicle. Add to that a whopping 10 degrees of gun depression, and also rockets that allow you to boost its top speed up to a very healthy level, which also scale with the turbo. You just have this all-round disgusting tank. It would be bad enough if it hit for 800 alpha damage, but maybe it had really bad armor. That's just not the case. It would be bad enough if it hit for 800 alpha damage and had okay armor, but it was just horrendously slow. But with the rockets, that's not the case as well, because quite often you only need a burst of speed to be able to get into a position at the start of the battle, or to be able to make a play to be able to outflank an important adversary. And talking about adversaries, LeBot is now in a 1 versus 5 situation against the enemy team. So they're going to be in contention for the Collar medal. However, there's 4,700 hit points on the enemy team, and the BZ-176 only has 677 hit points left. This should be a challenge, unless of course there's some AFK tanks. Although I think that EBR might be mentally AFK with that kind of bold, ambitious play around the BZ-176. That is the worst thing you could ever do against a tank that packs all of its damage per minute into a single shot, is attack and then allow it to reload while your allies are catching up. When you play against this tank, you have to all come at the same time. Just like this IS-3 coming around the corner. Where's his friends? Oh, there's his friends. Oh, I see AMX. I like the way that LeBot actually tried to ram kill the IS-3 there. But this is actually a very interesting scenario, because this IS-3 is packing 3 marks of excellence, so they're not a noob. They should know exactly where to shoot the BZ-176, and it looks like he's trying to shoot down onto his roof deck, but he's not quite managing to find the angle, and that allows LeBot to finish him off. Now, there's actually an auto-flip mechanic inside the game now, where if you're on your side for 30 seconds, then you will get flipped up. However, LeBot is going to bully the CDA, who made a very bold play trying to jump on top of the BZ-176 here, and is going to just keep bullying them and ramming them inside, inevitably finishing them off. And now changing their 1 versus 5 into a 1 versus 1 with 124 hit points to their name. LeBot is now going to be in contention not only for the one that everybody wants, the Collar medal, but also for the 8th kill to get a Radley Walters medal. Now, that 50 TP prototype has last been spotted a long time ago, all the way over towards the west. And we don't know whether they're going to be on full hit points or not, because they were outside LeBot's maximum render distance of 564 meters. And also, the 50 TP is on 2 kills. So, Colorful on the enemy team, or is it Colorful with a 1, probably, definitely is not AFK if they've picked up a couple of kills here. So LeBot kind of curses themselves out here a little bit by saying, I bet I lose. But there is the 50 TP, and luckily it's taken a little bit of damage, so it might be a 2-shot. Wow, the 50 TP chokes a shell. I wish LeBot had one of his rockets left in this game. Now they just got to wiggle, 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 try and bait the lower plate, try and bait the side armor off this tank, hope the 50 TP chokes, and they do. They bounce a gold round off the front of the BZ-176, and that should be all she wrote if LeBot manages to go through the side, which of course they do. GG. Indeed, LeBot. And this is where, like, it's a bit of a conundrum now. I mean, this was an epic game of World of Tanks. 8,000 damage and 8 kills in a tier 8 tank, and also a Collar medal. This was massive. It was great play by LeBot. But when you have tanks like this, it kind of just spoils a little bit of the fun. Not only for the player who had the epic game, do they really feel that they were epic, or do they feel that it was the overpowered tank that enabled them to have that epic performance? And also, I bet you it spoils a lot of the fun for the absolute graveyard that LeBot created around here, including, we won't talk about the CDA anymore. This is the definition of poor game balance, and as it is a premium tank inside the game, we now have this awkward conundrum of what can Wargaming do about it? Well, the obvious answer is nerf it. Wargaming, you have to. You have to do something about the BZ-176. And you've currently got a good opportunity where it's never been sold for money. So nobody has actually purchased this thing directly for cash. Only for loot boxes. And they weren't buying loot boxes to buy the BZ176 anyway, right? You could easily do what should be done and either give this thing a bit more of a weak point on top, increase the size of the cupola, maybe just slow the vehicle down even a little bit more, increase its reload a little bit, or probably one of the most important things, which is to shave about 40 millimeters of penetration off the HE shells so they can't compete with reasonable amounts of armor. Force this thing to go and use its 160 millimeter gun to overmatch 50 millimeter plates and aim for weak points or roof decks or just areas where you know that you can be able to overmatch, like the sides of tanks, for example. And the problem for Wargaming now is they've sold something that if they were to sell again, they know perfectly well this thing is overpowered. And so if they do sell this thing again, it's basically Wargaming saying that we will make our game worse for greed. And so they've kind of got themselves into a bit of a pickle where they've got something which is exciting gameplay that lots of people would want to purchase, but if they sell it, then it's just outright pay-to-win garbage. However, if they nerfed the vehicle a little bit to a point where it was still good, but just not absolutely bonkers OP, and it still had fun gameplay, they could sell it again, and then they could make more money while also balancing a tank and making their game better. Now, I can only dream of a day where Wargaming nerf premium tanks again, just like they have done in the past with the Type 59 and the Super Pershing. But it's been roughly about 10 years since that happened, and it's understandable when they release probably about 20 new premium tanks every single year that one is going to go into the game poorly balanced like the BZ176, and I would argue has actually probably caused quite a lot of players to just give up and quit because it is the epitome of pay to win. And just like what Wargaming did recently with the nerfs to the Chieftain, the 279E, and the tanks are still pretty darn good to play, just not hugely popular inside the matchmaker, just ruining games. That I think, at least for me, has made the matchmaker a lot more fun to play in, and I think the nerfs have been pretty well received by the player base. Wargaming, you've got an opportunity here to take the balancing of your game to another level while also creating yourself possible future monetization opportunities by selling a vehicle that you've rebalanced rather than you just leaving in the game completely overpowered. So an epic game here for Labot. This was a Radley Walters medal for those 8 kills, the Kolobanos medal for standing alone against at least 5, a Spartans medal for ricocheting with less than 10% hit points, a Steel Wall medal for blocking 1,700 damage, enough to kill the vehicle at least one time over, and a High Caliber for that 8,000 damage. And even though Labot spammed gold in this game and didn't fire any regular ammunition, they still make a 54,000 credit profit. Now, to be fair, that is if you hit 15 out of 16 shells and you penetrate 15 of those 15 shells. But the fact that this tank can just spam gold and still make credits in a battle just further highlights the problem of creating overpowered premium tanks. And so Wargaming, please do the right thing and just nerf the BZ176 so that you can sell it again. Or if nerfing premium tanks is never a possibility, please, please, please don't sell this tank ever again, as its presence in the matchmaker is beyond bonkers. Anyway, ladies and gents, boys and girls, that was it for today. Really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And let me know in the comments down below what you think about the BZ176. Do you think it should be just removed from the game? Do you think it should be nerfed? Do you think it should be left alone? And do you think that Wargaming should just sell it in its current form? And if you're watching this video as it goes live on Monday, I'm going to be going live all day on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby, giving you new tokens so you can get closer towards your Ram 2 or your M485. So come along and say hi in chat and get some fat loot at the same time. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.